Hi, and welcome to my podcast. My name is Kate Jones, and today I will be discussing how to be ethical in the workplace. For years, established companies have tried to maintain the balance of ethical actions in places of business. Now, in a world filled with startups and entrepreneurs, ethical business deals have become more important than ever. After seeing my dad go through a difficult startup experience dealing with partners with very different ethics from him, I've decided to dig deeper into business ethics for entrepreneurs and startups. In this first episode, we will analyze the basics of business ethics and explore the ways in which an entrepreneur can stay ethical in the workplace. Before diving into the ethics of startups, it is important that we define a few key terms. For example, what is a startup? Neil Bulenthal, co-founder and co-CEO of Warby Parker, defines a startup as a company working to solve a problem where the solution is not obvious and success is not guaranteed. A startup is typically a result of the work of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship requires hard work, but the potential for economic payoff and career satisfaction appeals to many. This business leader must be willing to take on the risk of starting a new company and offering a product or service in the hope of a profit. However, most importantly, it is up to them to establish an inclusive and ethical work environment. Every year, the National Business Ethics Survey conducts a survey in which they capture trends in workplace ethics to identify drivers that improve ethical workforce behavior. In 2013, 60% of misconduct on the job occurred among managers, and 24% of the employees blamed senior-level managers for unethical behavior. However, ethical challenges are not just reserved for startups. In 2016, Wells Fargo experienced unethical business behavior among senior-level executives, resulting in misconduct of lower-ranking employees. At the time, John Stumpf served as CEO and chairman of the board. Many Wells Fargo employees testified that Mr. Stumpf had created a toxic and challenging work environment. According to the Harvard Business School Wells Fargo case study, the employees transferred funds when needed from the customer's authorized accounts, ordered credit cards without customer permission, created phony PIN numbers and fake email addresses to enroll existing customers for net banking services, and forged client signatures on paperwork. The employees who refused to act on such suggestions were harassed, penalized, and even terminated. Here to talk about his own experience in a challenging startup environment is Mr. Wade Jones. Hi, Mr. Jones. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to let me ask you a few questions.
Of course.
Can you please explain what your startup idea was?
It was basically to try to help people work happy and to match people with jobs based on more than just a resume. The idea was that companies would come to my company, which was called TrueU, and they would upload a role profile, and based on the job description, we knew the competencies that best fit that role. And so then when people came to our site and joined, they took an assessment and were able to understand their competencies, and then we could match those. And it was based on more than just a resume. It was based on their leadership skills, their personality styles, and their competencies, which we believed gave a higher probability of fit for the job. So therefore, people could love what they do.
How did you go about selecting your business partners?
I was introduced to a guy by a friend and of mine who I'd known for probably 20 years. And this guy was a retired executive, and he was talking to me about my company and my idea. And he believed in the idea and offered up that he might be interested in investing, and then said he'd be really, really interested in investing if his son was a part of it. And I naively said, even though my instinct sort of said, I don't know that I want to get in business with a father and son, but I thought, but there's the money and I can realize my dream. And so that was really the primary factor.
And when you first partnered with these people, did you discuss what you expected from each other in terms of being an ethical business?
Sadly, not in as much detail as I would if I were doing it again. It was really more about the type of culture we wanted to have and the values that we wanted the organization to have, which was basically people first. I let that probably cloud my judgment a little bit and believe that if they wanted a business that was about people first, then surely they were people driven. And we didn't really get into discussions around what type of ethics and values we personally had. And I also thought that because they knew my friend who I trusted and respected for many, many years, that hopefully that was a good indicator that they would be like-minded.
When was the first time you realized that your ideas of ethics did not line up?
I must have blocked it from memory a little bit because it was such a traumatic experience, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think it was the night before we were supposed to go into our presentation meeting. My business partner said, "I won't go to the meeting unless you give me more stock." That was not in our agreements that we had signed together. And when I told the attorney about it, he basically said, you're in business with bad actors and you've got to figure out how to get out of it. And so I think that was the situation, which was the first signal that they were going to try to steal the company from me.
What are you doing now, and how do these past experiences influence your work?
So I work for a company called Sabre, which is a travel technology company, and I absolutely love what I do. I feel like I'm driving a lot of change in the organization. I'm leading people, which I really enjoy, and getting to make a difference both within an organization and within an industry that's ripe for some disruption. And I would say that, oddly enough, I don't really regret what happened at TrueU, even though it was really hard at the time, because of where I've landed. I've landed in an environment that I really enjoy, and I would not have ended up there had I not been on this path. I can look back on that experience now with a fair amount of pride because, there's millions of people that talk about doing that and never do. And I've done it, and it's really, really hard. But I think I'm a better business person because of it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me, Mr. Jones.
Thank you,
I really
Kate.
appreciate it.
I really enjoyed our time. Thank you.
I'd like to take this time to thank Horwitz & Company for sponsoring this podcast. Horwitz & Co. is a consulting company that specializes in startups and small businesses. Barry Horwitz has had extensive experience with entrepreneurial and startup ventures and brings that experience to bear when working with startup companies. He's written several business plans that successfully raised venture capital funding. Through his work teaching entrepreneurship and strategy at Boston University, he guided the development of dozens of business plans and participated in frequent judging panels for class projects and business plan competitions alongside angel investors and venture capitalists. For all your startup and entrepreneurial consulting needs, Horwitz & Co. is the place to go. Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Now, back to ethics. The Markula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University defined a few key steps for a good start to being an ethical entrepreneur. First of all ethical startups recognize the ethical dilemmas that surround them in the first few months. The ethical entrepreneur finds early opportunities to make his ethical commitment real. A Silicon Valley entrepreneur who took over a months-old company recently refused to send faulty financial data to venture capitalists over the objection of his new team. You just don't do business that way, reflects the entrepreneur. He communicated clearly from that day the ethical standards he and his company would follow. Next, ethical startups make ethics a core value of the enterprise. In recent years, startup founders have discovered that they must explicitly embrace doing business ethically to counter the temptation to fudge various standards. In addition, the ethical entrepreneur creates an inclusive atmosphere. She anticipates the ethical tensions in day-to-day decisions. As business plans are written and product capabilities are described, the ethical tensions are inevitable. The ethically thoughtful entrepreneur anticipates these tensions and talks about them with the team before these situations are confronted. The ethical entrepreneur welcomes ethical questions and debates. Some situations cannot be anticipated, and the entrepreneur must always keep an open door so that new ethical issues can be worked out. Even the willingness to take time to discuss and resolve tough ethical dilemmas gives the signal that ethics is important in a startup. The ethical entrepreneur talks about ethical values all the time. The frantic pace of startups and their rapid growth create short memories and a staff that is often very new to the enterprise. Only by continually articulating the ethical commitment can the entrepreneur be sure that the members of the organization understand the ethical commitment and know it is real. The rewards of being an ethical startup are many. Personal and team satisfaction is the most prominent. Workers who feel free to act ethically and to deal with others ethically feel better about themselves. Greater personal satisfaction translates into higher productivity and lower turnover. For the individual entrepreneur, a reputation for ethical dealing can increase the opportunities for business partnerships and lower the transactional costs of managing ongoing relationships. One entrepreneur said it best. The ability to trust the other party and to do business on a single handshake speeds up the progress we all can make. Thanks for listening, and tune in next time for more business ethics.